Welcome to this information session for the Environmental Justice Fund. It's great to have you all with us today. First off is our introductions. I'm all the way to the left there. My name is Jimena again, and I am joined this year with two incredible folks who are part of the team, Sujan Chon and Jose Vasquez. I will let Sujan and Jose both introduce themselves briefly here. So Sujan, can I pass it to you?
Hi, everyone. My name is Sujin Chon. I'm one of the consultants working with y'all on the Environmental Justice Fund. I'm calling in from the Swinomish Indian Reservation in Skagit County. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm really excited to be working with this team and with y'all on this project.
Hi, everybody. Buenos dias. My name is Jose Manuel Vasquez, he, him, el preferred pronouns. I'm here as well, also as one of the OSC consultants supporting the Environmental Justice Fund. I'm really looking forward to reading and seeing more of all your proposals. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you both. You may have already been in touch with us via office hours, and the three of us will be available as well throughout the application process. So if you have any questions, you'll hear from one of us. And before we dive into the actual presentation, we'd like to start with the land acknowledgement. And we acknowledge that environmental and climate change challenges and inequities cannot be confronted without also confronting the history of settlement and occupation and its ongoing impacts on the land and people of our region. The work of the Environmental Justice Fund is focused on what is widely known today as Seattle, named in honor of Chief Sealth, a Duwamish and Suquamish ancestor. The city occupies the traditional lands of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people, past and present, and the Coast Salish nations, whose shared waters and the lands they touch include the Duwamish, Puyallup, Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. The people indigenous to these waters and land have been stewarding them since time immemorial. One hope of the Environmental Justice Fund impacts is to honor that history and current stewardship and be part of the solution to bringing equity, balance, and healing to the land, water, and the people who live in it and around it. In terms of the program materials, everything that we'll discuss in this session is available on our website, seattle.gov/environment/EJ-Fund. There you will find a link to the online application. You will be able to see a preview of that online application in a Word format. You will also see the budget template, the project timeline template, and examples of eligible projects, as well as generally the guidelines. I do want to name that we had some issues with the first application link, excuse me, that went live. So if you encounter any issues with the link that seems broken, please head to the website that you see there on your screen, and you will have access to all the correct information and a functional link to the application. Great. So before we dive into the ins and outs of the Environmental Justice Fund, we wanted to provide some context about the background and how this fund actually came to be. And it all started back in 2015 when community members partnered with the city of Seattle to really dive into a deep community engagement process to understand how communities were really thinking about environmental justice issues that they were facing and climate change impacts as well, and to really develop some solutions and partnership between community and the city to begin to think about how we as a city of Seattle really approach our environmental work in ways that benefit everyone. So the picture on the left is for the Equity and Environment Agenda, which is really a blueprint to advance race and social justice in Seattle's environmental work. And while Seattle has really long time been recognized as an environmental leader, we know that our BIPOC communities, our immigrants, our refugees, and our communities with low income, as well as our youth and our elders, have not always benefited from our environmental progress. And that was really evident when our 16 community leaders at the time really engaged in culturally relevant ways and conducted really deep engagement with communities to understand those impacts and try to begin to surface some solutions in collaboration. So the 4 photos that you see are the goals that make up the Equity and Environment Agenda. These goals are really grounded in first, healthy environments for all, which is all about the external conditions. It's really about ensuring that community has access to clean air and clean water, to green space, to culturally relevant and healthy foods, as well as safety and quality of life. So we really ask ourselves questions about how do we improve the environment while keeping people in place? How do we understand and address cumulative environmental impacts? How do we address socioeconomic conditions while also understanding and improving the multiple environmental pollutants and hazards that are impacting people's everyday lives and their health? And the second goal outlined by community is on the top right corner, which is jobs, local economies, and youth pathways. So this one is really about growing the green economy. And in that process, really ensuring that our BIPOC communities and youth have a pathway to green careers. The goal on the bottom left is equity in city environmental programs. And this one is really about our work as a city and making sure that when we build environmental programs, that we really connect and center our communities who have been most impacted and left out of conversation. So again, that's for us, our BIPOC communities, immigrants or refugees, low-income communities, as well as youth and elders, and folks for whom English may be a second language. And so we are really thinking about benefiting everyone and making sure that our programming is accessible to everyone. The last goal outlined on the right bottom corner is environmental narrative and community leadership. So we recognize that the environmental narrative has traditionally excluded the voices and experiences and solutions that have been led by our BIPOC communities for decades. And so this goal is really about infusing art and culture and creativity into all of our environmental approaches so that our communities can really see themselves as part of this movement because they have been for a long time. And in the community engagement process, so what I just shared is really an overview of the 4 goals that guide the equity and environment agenda. And in the process of developing those goals, 2 asks that community made were, 1, to really develop one pathway for communities who are most impacted to really inform and work in partnership with the city on program development and policy development as well. So we could have the next slide, Sujan. Thank you. That ask was actioned by developing and launching the Environmental Justice Committee. So you see the photo of those folks on your screen. Those are Environmental Justice Committee members, both current and former members, and they play a critical role. They played a critical role in advocating for the development of the of the Environmental Justice Fund. In addition, they currently, some former members will serve on the review team. So there is a clear connection between their work and the Environmental Justice Fund. I wanted to name that a community review process has been a really critical component of the Environmental Justice Fund since inception. So while we as staff and our team of 3 will manage the process, it is community members who will actually review all your proposals and put forth funding recommendations that will be approved by the mayor's office. Okay, now getting into the details of the fund. We start from a place of really recognizing that across the US, race is the most significant predictor of a person living near contaminated air, water, or soil. So the Environmental Justice Fund is really a grant opportunity for community-led projects that improve environmental conditions, respond to impacts of climate change, and really get us closer to achieving environmental and climate justice for our communities who have been most impacted. Thank you, Sujan. Now I'll pass it. Great. So this year we have $750,000 available for grants, which will range from a minimum grant size of $25,000 to a maximum grant size of $75,000. We really aim to support a wide range of projects, and for us that really means everything from projects that may be ongoing projects, as well as ongoing programming or new projects or new programming that you're wanting to really launch. Now, our commitment is also to support new and emerging groups. So it could be organizations or groups that are starting to enter the world or the environmental and climate justice movement, and also support organizations and groups who have been doing this work for years and decades.
So you may be asking what types of projects or programs are eligible. And so our projects and programs that we're looking at will occur within the Seattle city limits. They'll benefit people who live, work, learn, worship, and play in the city. They'll be led by or in partnership with those who are most impacted by environmental and climate inequities. They'll focus on advancing the climate and or environmental justice goals that were mentioned before. And for past grantees, the proposed projects will be different from previously funded projects. If your office is located outside of the city of Seattle, you can apply if you meet the requirements listed above, which includes taking place within the city limits and primarily benefiting the people who live, work, learn, worship, and play in the city. So who can apply? Any organization that either has its own 501c3 nonprofit status or has a fiscal sponsor that has a 501c3 status. Now, if you're one of the newer groups who doesn't have a fiscal sponsor yet or its own 501c3, please reach out to us before August 26th, and we'll work with you on trying to identify an organization that can serve as your fiscal sponsor. As Jimena mentioned before, we're looking to fund a very broad range of eligible projects. And as you can see on this list, there's many different ways to approach submitting a project proposal. And those can be things like anything related to community health or programs focused on serving elders and seniors or youth, general operating support, strategic planning, food justice. So there's a wide variety of options. However, there are some funding restrictions as well. We can't fund every type of work or entity. So individuals are, number one, not eligible for funding. In addition, the fund can't be used for things like scholarships, the purchase of land or buildings, capital projects, which include construction or renovation of facilities or site improvements, the maintenance of facilities or physical improvements to non-natural areas of parks or existing recreational facilities that do not have a clear environmental justice purpose. Also, the fund cannot be used for projects that are not accessible to the public. Purchase of equipment that includes things like cameras, video recording equipment, laptops, tables, etc. However, if your project needs this type of equipment, the fund can support the rental of this type of equipment. The fund doesn't support the overhead costs of an organization that is not related to the actual project, the Environmental Justice Fund project or program. Some of you may be part of organizations that include other things aside from this particular project, so it wouldn't be able to cover those overhead expenses. And then again, it doesn't cover repeat funding of the same project that has been awarded in the past. However, the fund does support ongoing program that has been previously funded. If you have any questions about what the distinction is between that, please feel free to reach out to us either through a TA session or through email, and we'd be happy to talk through what is eligible and not eligible.
Yeah, thank you, Sujin. Now I'm happy to walk you through the actual application process and what that would look like on your end. Please remember this key date. Please submit all written proposals online by 4 p.m. on Friday, September 16th. That 4 p.m. deadline we're trying to be as fair and equal to everybody. So please be sure to make sure your SurveyMonkey account is set up. You have everything uploaded and everything looks fine to you by 4 p.m. on Friday, September 16th. If you do face any technical difficulties, you can reach to us via email or sign up for a technical assistance call, as Sujin mentioned, to help answer any technical questions you may have. Please be sure to answer all questions in full. Don't leave any blank spaces. Or if there is a question that you're not able to answer or you don't have an answer, you can put NA. But please be sure to fill out all the fields in the application, the online application, especially those related to your organization, your project, the people, and the impact that your project will touch. Please be succinct in your responses. As Jimena mentioned, these applications will be reviewed by community leaders, community members, both current and previous members of the Environmental Justice Committee. So they are going to read quite a significant number of applications. So please try to be as clear and succinct as possible. And we also recognize that we're not expecting perfectly written proposals. We understand that some organizations or some communities might not have access to a professional grant writer or might not have somebody on staff, or English might be their second language. So we definitely take that into consideration, or the review community really takes that into consideration and is not looking for a perfectly written proposal, just making sure that your point is made clear and it's explained in the application. But again, if you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out to us and we're happy to help you walk you through that. After all applications are screened for the minimum eligibility requirements that were mentioned early, the ones that do meet those minimum eligibility requirements will move forward to the oral presentation portion. And this is where the review team will really get a chance to talk directly with you and speak about your proposal's community connection and community benefit. They may also have the chance to ask any other follow-up questions, but they're mainly going to be focusing on those two aspects of the grant application, the community connection and the benefit that your project will bring to the community. So the three main questions that are asked there is, who is the community that this project or program would serve, and why is this project or program important to them? How will your community benefit from your project or program? And lastly, how do your community members inform and or play a leadership role in your proposed project or program? And again, as I mentioned, please have that date, and I recommend adding it to your calendar. I know I always, when I wait till the last minute, I sometimes face technical difficulties, so definitely recommend getting in early as possible, and making sure you figure all of that out. As Jimena mentioned, we do have $750,000 available in funding. Grants will be made in budgets between $25,000 and $75,000. You have flexibility to submit proposals anywhere in between that. And also the granting period is for a total of 18 months, beginning January 2023 and ending in June 2024. Now, you do have some flexibility. You don't have to submit a proposal that spans the full 18 months. You can choose 12 months, you can choose 6 months, whatever best fits your community need and your proposal. But as long as the expenditures for this project are spent between those 18 months, between January 2023 and June 2024. Once you successfully submit your application by the deadline of 4 p.m. on Friday, September 16th, we'll notify applicants that pass that first screening and meet the minimum eligibility requirement by September 30th, which then you will be invited to attend a virtual oral presentation with the review committee. Those will take place between October 10th and 21st. And then they'll take some time deliberating and formulating their final recommendations that they'll submit up to the mayor's office for final approval. And once that whole process wraps up, we're estimating that by December 10th, all applicants will be notified whether you were successfully awarded funds or not. And then after you receive that final notification on December 10th, there will be a window between December 10th and sometime in January to finalize your final scope of work based on the recommendations of the review committee. The review committee may have the option to recommend an amount different than what was proposed in your project based on their review of the community benefit and the community need. So just be aware that there will be another window to maybe hash out additional pending questions or finalize your project budget and proposal in that final window if you are one of the successful awardees of this grant. So elements of a successful proposal that we have are, we're definitely going to be looking at the organization. Sorry, previous slide, please. Oh, I think yeah, thank you. So the quick overview of the review process, as I mentioned, all proposals are screened for basic eligibility requirements. And then those are sent over to the review team, who will have a chance to to ask questions and look at the community benefit and the community impact of your proposal. If you have any questions or want to look more in detail about the eligibility requirements and the funding guidelines, you can definitely look at them at the link that was provided both here and in the chat. If you look at page 6, you can find all the detailed guidelines for what the review committee will be looking at for your proposals. Thank you. So now the elements of a successful proposal, the first portion that they're going to be looking at is the organization that has a maximum point allocation of 16.5 points. And what they'll be looking for here is your organization or group have strong ties to the community you're intending to serve? Does the organization and leadership come from or reflects the communities that you're intending to serve? And is racial justice a lived organizational value throughout your organization? So please be sure to speak on those as you answer that question. And now I'll hand it back to Sujin.
Sorry for not being the best PowerPoint advancer. Thank you for being patient with me. Other elements of a successful proposal. So the project category, that's actually going to be the maximum number of points out of all the categories, and that makes the most sense. That's kind of the bread and butter of your proposal. An applicant is going to demonstrate a deep understanding of community issues and environmental justice. The proposal is going to clearly identify an environmental or climate justice challenge or problem, will fill a community identified need and propose a solution that advances environmental or climate justice. Your project goals are going to be clear and achievable. The proposed work is going to demonstrate good planning, and the budget is going to align with the proposal, which includes the budget expenses are clear and reasonable to the proposal, the project. We also want to see that the people who are impacted by the work are involved in leading and implementing the work. Your project team, including staff, volunteers, and partners, have the expertise, skills, lived experience to carry out the project. The community served is reflected in the project team, and there's an adequate number of staff, volunteers, and partners to help carry out the work.
Great. Thank you, Sujan. The impact section is another section that the review team will be looking at during the review process, and there will be 6 points allocated to this section, and it's really about understanding whether the outcomes demonstrated achievable environmental and climate justice impacts for the communities that you have outlined for your proposal. The final piece is related to the oral presentation. So all eligible applicants, as Jose already shared, would participate in the oral presentation. And the review team at that point will really be assessing the community connection that the applicant has, as well as the community benefits of the proposal. So really they'll be wanting to understand whether your proposal is being responsive to the priorities or needs of those who are most impacted by environmental or climate inequities. And again, that is also related to bullet 2. We want to make sure that projects benefit those who are most impacted. So for us, we're thinking about Black, Indigenous, communities of color, immigrants, refugees, people with low incomes, youth, and elders. And the final component that they'll look at is really to ensure that the proposal includes clear opportunities for the intended community members to really inform or play a leadership role in that proposal. Great. In terms of how you can connect with us, all this information, again, is available on the website. We can also be reached via email at ejfrfp@gmail.com. And we are also hosting office hours or technical assistance to connect with you all about any questions you may have related to a project idea or questions you have about the application itself. So please feel free to sign up for office hours. One of the 3 of us will connect with you. We're also available via phone at the number that you see on the screen. At this point, we will stop recording and we will move into the question and answer portion of this session. Thank you so much for joining.